This is Frank Consello with the Crested Butte Home podcast. In this episode, I get to welcome my second consecutive Olympic athlete, this time from Nordic skiing. Jenny Stillo represented the small country of Honduras at the '92 Olympic Games in Albertville, France. And if that sounds like it's a good story, it definitely is, so stay tuned. And we also talk about her recent 500 or so mile hike of the Camino de Santiago in Spain. My wife and I recently did a shorter version of the same hike, and I can tell you firsthand it is a really amazing experience, and it's hard to explain. The best way probably to get a feel for what this hike was all about is to watch a movie called The Way with Emilio Estevez and Martin Sheen. I highly recommend it. But in any case, this is a great interview with Jenny Stillo, and let's just go ahead and get to it. On the Crested Butte Home podcast today, my guest is Jenny Stillo, and why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're from and to start off with?
I was born and raised in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, and I came to the U.S. when I was 20 years old to go to Western State College in Gunnison.
What was that like growing up in Honduras?
I went to the American school and learned both languages at the same time. So it was a bilingual school with high school and IB and bachillerato, which is the equivalent of high school. So I had 3 programs. It was great. It's a great country, and it borders 2 oceans. So we would always go to one ocean for the weekend, and it's a very beautiful and was very peaceful country when I was growing up.
What did you do for fun? I mean, you mentioned going to the oceans and stuff. I mean, did you grow up surfing, or what sports and activities were you into?
Oh no, just basically playing on the beach. Yeah, doing a lot of swimming and not really surfing or anything like that. Now there is more surfing, for instance, and water skiing, but those are mainly American sports. So just playing on the beach. Like, my mom couldn't ever get us out of the ocean. We were there from the time we got up till 6 o'clock at night. And I did do a little snorkeling, and later on in life when I went back, I did do some scuba diving and things like that. Oh, kayaking as well, but that's not till I got back.
Okay.
Basically growing up with swimming and having fun in the water.
So how did you get from Honduras to Western State then? That sounds like a good story.
I had a good friend, basically a boyfriend that I had met in the United States, and he wanted to see me again. So he moved to Gunnison and basically applied for me at Western. And they were looking for foreign students because they had there was only like 28 of us or something, less than 30, I remember. So they were really trying to get the international market at Western. So I was basically following my friend.
And did you know anything about Gunnison or Colorado or winter or any of that, or was this totally sight unseen?
Not sight unseen. I was just following, and needed to go to college. I took a couple years of gap years, and I decided it was time, and so I didn't have a clue that there was that much snow, and pretty much was very cold the first winter.
Well, what was that? Yeah, I mean, what was that like? I mean, do you remember like your first snowstorm and your thoughts on this different climate here?
Well, I remember one time I came in the summer. So was it June, I think? And so they said, my friends at the dorm said, we're going to go cliff diving. And I said, well, that sounds awesome. So I went with them. And I remember my ears got so cold that they kept ringing for like 2 weeks. I just remember my ears, it was so free. That's melted snow in Blue Mesa. So that was my first experience with how cold is. And compared to Honduras, the water is about, in the Caribbean, it's about, 82 degrees if you measure it. So I didn't expect it to be so cold. But it was fun after that. I got used to. Yeah, and I didn't ski. I didn't ski at Western. Basically, I was a foreign student with a limited budget. And so I barely came to Crested Butte in those 3 years that I was going to Western.
What did you do for fun? I mean, did you have any activities, or were you pretty much just going to school then?
I was pretty much going to school, but it was really interesting to come from Honduras to just basically middle income people, students that went, because I didn't expect to see that much affluence in a college. I didn't know, whereas in Honduras it was mostly the wealthy that did activities and went off to college, which I was fortunate that my parents, had good positions and got educated in the United States. So, but it was a culture shock to see all the activities and everything going on, and basically wasn't a high-end college, and it was, I really, really wanted to do well at Western, so I dedicated a lot of my time to doing that. And I graduated cum laude, and that was basically it. But I also did, rode people's bikes, and I didn't have a bike till the very end, and just kept active. I taught aerobics in the basement of our apartment, I remember. Oh. So I kept active, but just was in awe of everything. I remember losing a lot of weight when I first got to this country, because it was just so amazing that there was this much everything, again, compared to minority in Honduras, and it was culture shock for sure. So, yeah.
How did you, I didn't quite understand that. You lost weight because?
I did, because I was in culture shock.
Okay, just from the shock.
Yeah, it was amazing to me to see all the, the stereos in the rooms and the dorms and all these things.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What did you study, and what were your plans? Obviously, you have mostly stayed here in the Gunnison Valley, but what were your plans after college?
Well, I studied business administration, and I minored in accounting. I really liked accounting, and I think it's a useful tool throughout, having businesses in Crested Butte. Yeah, my plans were to go back, but I ended up getting married and having my boy at 23 years old, so I never went back.
Gotcha. Okay, so you get married, you have your son, and then what? I mean, were you working here? You said that you started to get more active in the sports here and visit Crested Butte more. So what was that period like? Well,
in 1983, my son was born, so that moved to Crested Butte, and I started working here as a bookkeeper in a store, at the company store, which is now the Secret Stash. So I did the books for them, and I worked retail, and they allowed me to take my boy. And Justin, my son, his dad was in the ski team, in the Nordic ski team for Western. So he taught me how to Nordic ski, and I loved it. I had also done a little bit of downhill skiing, but it didn't really catch my attention, as my passion was cross-country skiing. And I got hooked, and I just kept doing basically that activity in the winter and started running. Running was my summer sport, so a little bit of biking, but mostly running and hiking.
Were you big into the aerobic activities then as a kid in Honduras too, or was this something you kind of picked up more and more as
I was here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always interested in aerobic activity, but guess because I'm a woman, I couldn't really freely do it. Like I would run in the streets of Honduras, and it was not the most ideal scenario for a female because, men shun at it. And so I had to, you basically have to join the gyms and things like that. I'd rather be outside if I could. So the liberty that I could just go out and just, hike for hours and run and cross country ski was, because I always wanted to do it. For some reason, it's just one of those things. When I was in middle school or high school, I can't remember, the United States has this program, because remember it had the equivalent of high school that was called the Presidential Fitness at the time. And a friend of mine and I were tied for first place, out of 120 students, and we could just do everything. And so for some reason, I could do all these sports. I just didn't know I could do them and never practice. I wish I would have, had the opportunity to have a track and a tennis court, because now I'm really into tennis and things like that, because I think, I could have been pretty good at those, but oh well, I still got to live in Crested Butte and do a bunch of fun things.
And you got to learn how athletic you actually were more and more as time went on.
Yes.
So with Nordic, are you classic or skate or both, or?
Well, I'm both. It's funny that you asked that, because I can't remember in 1983 if there wasn't any skate. I'm trying to remember when Bill Koch started the skating movement, but I started only classically.
Okay.
And then moved to skating whenever it was brought to the Olympics, basically, or to one of the world championships or something. And then I I want to do that because it's a lot faster.
Yeah. Well, I know where your story goes. So you eventually start competing a little bit in Nordic skiing. Is that, how did you became an Olympic athlete in Nordic skiing. So how did that happen?
Well, I started competing, and I joined this, what was called the Solomon Series. The company Solomon had a competition in these states around Colorado and Wyoming and New Mexico, and so I said, well, I'm gonna do that, and I'm just gonna see how it goes, because I love the sport so much, and I ended up coming second. But so the ski area, because I was working for the ski area at the time, wrote a press release, because it was odd that I was from Honduras and I was, came in second in the Solomon Series. So, and then the press, and I happened to be working for the marketing department. The press started, the local Denver, KUSA and Channel 7 and Channel 4 started telling stories about me. And the funny thing is that at the time, the channels in Honduras were the Denver channels. Out of all the states, it had to be the Denver channels for pure coincidence.
Do you have any idea why? That's so weird.
No. You know how, I'm trying to think of, sometimes you go to another, well, in Honduras now, I think my sister I was just there, turned on the channel and we got Nebraska or something. Well, I'm like, why do you get Nebraska instead of Denver?
Uh-huh.
And it's just however it works with all the networks and whatever. So, because I'm like, at the time I was Denver. That's all I know, because they saw me. And so then they called me and they said, we want you. Then NOC, the National Olympic Committee, said we really need representation, because we've never had a representative from our country. And they said, would you want to do this? And I said, well, I'm just a regional competitor. I'm not Olympic material. Uh-huh. So they insisted. They said that the beauty about the Olympics is that they're looking for participants, versus a World Cup or a World Championship, which is all about competition. They're just the IOC, International Olympic Committee, is looking for countries and participation and, getting the world together. So they were insistent. And I made sure that none of the budget of the sports budget, which is basically just limited to men's soccer and was at the time. Now there's other smaller sports, but I didn't want to take any money from the country. So the IOC paid for everything for little countries like Honduras, like my travel and any kind of equipment. And so I said, oh, sure, then I'll be happy to do it. And give the little country some recognition, because they just loved me, because I was there to represent them.
So with the Olympics, in this case at least, there was no, or was there a qualifying system, or they were just like, hey, you're invited?
Yeah, no, I did have to show a time. I can't remember exactly what it was. I have to go to my records, but I know, like, for running, it's like a 40-minute 10K. So whatever it was 10-kilometer race that I had to show, and that's it. Okay.
So which Olympics were these then that you got to go to, and how did it go?
It was Winter Olympics in Albertville, France. I competed in a place called Les Ici, and it went really well for my participation. I got to meet a lot of people like Mexico and Argentina, little Egypt, and it was an incredible experience. I didn't, obviously, I was participating. The thing is, I was in the back, but I was never last, because there's a lot of strategy involved with, like, every country, at least at the time, got 4 participants. Mm-hmm. So let's say all the Scandinavian countries had 4 participants, but they like, if they're in the teams, they do the draft to where they, go all out for the person that could probably win.
Okay, sure.
So, and then they drop out. It's like biking. So, yeah, so I just enjoyed it, and just, it was amazing. I did the best I could, and yeah, it was quite the experience. And I basically, like, was under the wing of the U.S. team, because they needed more space, and I was sharing my space only with the guy from Mexico, who was a gentleman, and so we had all the space, and the U.S. was pretty cramped in these spaces, so they needed, they had coaches and counselors and waxers, and so they said, we will take care of your equipment if you give us more space. So I ended up having the best possible equipment, and that was wonderful. And of course, hanging out with the U.S. team members and everything, the cafeteria, the food, the differences in the languages, and just the whole experience. It was, the security at the time was pretty incredible. They ran everything like you're going into an airport. And I thought, at the time, wow, this is so high security. Of course, that's all changed a lot. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was just in awe of everything. And, just like I said, the cafeteria, the food, they had squid for breakfast, I remember, because I think the Finnish loved squid for breakfast and stuff like that. Every day I was in awe of the venue and just the opportunity.
That's really cool that you were able to get the ski techs. From what little I know of Nordic racing, like, that's like 007 stuff. They have, like, locked briefcases, and it's like the perfect wax is like a big deal for Nordic racing, from what I understand.
Well, they were the technicians. They were there in the morning with thermometers in the snow. Yeah, and they were opening laptops. If you can believe that there was laptops at the time, they were like antique. I remember one day they did what was called the Harries. Now it's pretty common, I guess, but at the time, the Harries, they brush it enough to get this hair like, off the bottom of the ski, never even heard of it, conditions. And they're all keeping it a top secret with other countries, and they know Russians can't know what the Americans are doing. And of course, the Norwegians have it down to a science. And then everything changes by the time it's time for the race. And yeah, it's pretty high tech. So yes, I felt really lucky.
And you, was there anyone else from Honduras with you, or were you the only athlete for the opening ceremonies and all that?
Well, there has to be a representative. There has to be a Honduran, because he has to go to all the meetings. He or she has to go to all the meetings. So there was a representative from the National Olympic Committee. And then my husband, Tom, he came with me too. He was basically everything. He went to all the coaches' meetings and everything, other meetings that the other official didn't go to. So we all three marched in the opening ceremonies.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. I didn't know that Tom got to do that with you.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I guess one other question is, was that your first world competition experience? Or competing against, like you were saying, the Norwegians and the Finns and the Russians and all that? Was that the first time? Was that the Olympics?
One and only, yes.
So you went straight from the regional Solomon series to the Olympics. That's cool.
Yes. And I don't think I could have done it again. So it was I was pretty old.
Yeah, you were at this point, you were a mom. I don't know exactly how old you were, but probably a lot of the other athletes were
32. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, and most of the other athletes were probably 20. Interesting.
Well, is a little bit older. So it's not like gymnastics or something.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. You get endurance athletes can be
a little older. Yeah. But I did have my boy. I flew down. I took him to Honduras and left him with my mom to do all that world traveling.
Did they have watch parties in Honduras to watch your race?
I don't know.
Oh.
I did go to a couple of the press conferences. I remember they asked me to wear my uniform, what I was going to wear, and I was so hot. I was boiling.
It's 90 degrees or whatever it was, and humid, and you're wearing a winter outfit. Yeah.
It was just a one-piece, Lycra suit, but I was so hot, and I remember that vividly.
In the Crested Butte Real Estate Minute, May 2020 sales in real estate took a big hit, which is not at all unexpected given the recent stay-at-home orders, which started in mid-March, and the inability for real estate agents like myself to show property during the majority of that time. However, that said, we are opening up back again, and showings are once again allowed, and pending sales are rising. There are roughly 50 properties under contract right now, so I expect that June will look quite a bit better, and I expect the rest of the summer to continue steadily rising, probably back to normal levels, but that depends on a whole lot of things, especially that we don't backtrack and go into more stay-at-home orders if things get bad again. So let's hope everything goes well. The best way to stay up to date on the market would be to visit my website, CrestedButteRealEstateAgent.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter there. And you can also just call me, Frank Kinsella. My number is 970-596-7990 with any questions about the local real estate market here in Crested Butte or in Gunnison. Let's get back to the interview.
Well, that's really cool. What came next then after the Olympics? What were the other turns of your life after that?
Well, I really wanted to have another baby because I was getting older. And so, I had my girl, Asia, and I had her in 1993, 10 years after I had my boy. And then I was really busy with 2 children, and my husband, Tom Stillo, was a photographer. And we were like a mom and pop operation, and very proud to say he became very well known. Agencies all over the globe and nationally, he was well known sports photographer. Tommy didn't like to say he was just a ski photographer. He was a sports photographer, and he really did well. We developed quite a clientele, and had an amazing amount of talent to work with. All the athletes in Crested Butte, Gunnison, and so it was easy to shoot and to get great pictures with the likes of Frank Gonzala skiing, powder skiing.
Yep, we had a good time for sure.
Yeah, so everybody made him look good, and our pictures looked good, and we were everywhere. Yeah, Tommy was in everything from airplanes, like literally on the airplane, pictures to billboards to magazines to websites to it was really awesome what we accomplished. It takes a lot of marketing as well. There's photography is very competitive, and it does take a lot of marketing, which is where I came in.
That ended up being your role. You were able to use like some of the business school knowledge that you had to work on that side of the business then?
Correct. Yeah. Especially with the numbers so yes, like accounting, like I said before, but also marketing and sales and selling, because like I said, there's a lot of photographers, a lot of great pictures, but I would talk to them personally. I would send out submissions. I was always pitching a story. I was always looking for the writing. What story are we going to say besides the pictures, or
right.
not? Or sometimes the pictures spoke for themselves. So, yeah, always thinking of ways to move his images.
And then these days, you're a professional translator. So what types of things do you translate?
I just translated, let me see, 8 notifications for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife about the reopening of the state parks.
Okay.
So everything from boating, and it's all the work that I've done for the past 2 to 3 months has been about COVID.
I could see that, yeah.
Yes. So it's like use hand sanitizer, bring your own, social distancing, bathrooms are closed, everything. Yes, and of course they needed it yesterday. So so CPW has been one of my awesome clients that I have, and I have not a big clientele. It's just me and my editor and I. But yeah, I've had some good accounts. Not very big. I also work for Melanie at Lavish, and I also administer my houses here because I have a rental property. And just not too long ago, last year, Tom and I would caretake a couple of houses up on the hill as well, which kept us busy because they're big places. So a little bit of everything.
There you go.
And then I did it by myself for a couple of years, and the place is finally sold. And so I'm limiting myself. In this town, you have to have like 2 or 3 jobs, or
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I love translating though. It's fun.
Does that is there like an accreditation? I think I said that right. I know you went to school for it, and yet obviously you grew up bilingual. So how do you prove yourself as a translator, I guess, is the question I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I got a certificate in translation from Arizona State University. So I went back and did some graduate work, and it's all things translated. It's fascinating because basically anybody can be bilingual. There's a lot of, but it's different world as far as getting the idea across with the nuances that that come with the language. And it's not the same going word by word and trying to make sense out of it. You just, because it doesn't work that way.
Sure. I mean, Google and Facebook now, they try to translate and it kind of comes out as gibberish. So obviously there's a lot more to it.
I laughed really hard. But
Yeah.
it's fascinating. Languages are fascinating. Languages are about the culture. And with that said, you also have Spanish from Mexico, Spanish from Honduras, Spanish from Spain. As I was walking across Spain, I would tell my friend Steph, I don't know that word, or I don't know what they mean. And it's Spanish. And, the mother tongue is in Spain. So it's fascinating. And I love that field as well.
Yeah. I mean, you used to teach me and a few other people Spanish. And I think we've talked about this before, but I've done a fair bit of traveling. So I've been to Mexico and Peru. I was like, boy, I'm pretty okay at the Spanish thing. And then I'd go to Argentina and felt like I didn't know a single word. So Spanish is interesting for sure, and the different dialects and everything else. But
yeah, well, English is too, in the sense that if you go to Australia and then go to New York and then go to California, it's a different English as well.
Sure. Well, you mentioned it, and I wanted to get to that too. So you walked across Spain. So what was and I've done a smaller portion of this same trail, the Camino de Santiago trail. So what was that, and what is it first for people who aren't aware, and then how far did you walk and all that?
Yeah, I wanted to do Camino de Santiago de Compostela for a long time. And Tommy really wanted to perfect his Espanol, and we were empty nesters because Asia had left, and he loved to travel. My husband just loved to go places. We also had a house in Roatan, on the island of Honduras, an island off the coast of Honduras, for 17 years. So he got beautiful summer pictures as well. So anyway, so at one point he said, no, I got to learn Spanish. So we're going to go live in Sevilla. And at that time he was really into tennis, and España is known for its clay courts. Rafael Nadal made those pretty popular. Yeah. So I was going to walk Camino de Santiago, and he was going to drive and meet me in the different places. And he was going to play tennis, look for tennis courts while I got there. So that was the plan. And I kept saying, and he didn't want to walk. It's funny how he said it bothered his neck to walk, but then he could play volleyball and ski and do tennis and everything else. But walking was not, it bothered his neck. So it was a perfect plan. And I'd been hearing about Camino from different people. And then my husband passed in April 2018. And I kept thinking, what do I do? How do I remember him? What's the best way? And Camino de Santiago kept coming back. And at one point I thought, I just need to do it. And I have a really good friend, the places we caretake that I spoke about, that he basically said, I'll make it happen for you. He really loved Tom. He was, Mike was his name. He was in a wheelchair, and Tom was his wingman. So they would heli ski. I mean, this gentleman in a wheelchair would powder ski off a helicopter, and Tom was there in case he fell. He had to have Tom always, behind him, or somebody else. But he loved to ski with Tom, and basically that's why he had houses here in Crested Butte. So he said, I'll make it happen for you, because the financial part was going to be an issue, but I just thought, I just have to do this. I have to do this. And then I was like, okay, I'll just do it. A lot of people do it alone, but I really don't want to do it alone. So I was like throwing it I really want to do Camino de Santiago, and can somebody do it with me? And lo and behold, Stephanie Prater just said, I'll do it. You nuts? The whole thing. And it was absolutely nuts, but it was absolutely wonderful. So basically it is the biggest Christian pilgrimage in the world, the second biggest pilgrimage after Mecca. It's not religious. It doesn't have to be, at least. You can make it religious, but I would say, I don't know the statistics, but probably a good percentage of people are not religious, and it is fascinating. It is just an experience, one of a kind. I hold like the Olympics and Camino like on the same balance. They're so incredible experiences. So we went and started in Saint Jean Pied du Port and crossed, that's in France, and crossed the Pyrenees. That was the first leg. And ended up in Santiago de Compostela 31 days later.
And how many miles later?
It's under 500,
Mm-hmm.
790 kilometers. So, and that's how it's measured. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's like 480 miles. That's a little deceiving though, because once you're in a town and you're in those big cities, you walk so much more. Like we got lost in Leon, and we just said, oh, we just did another 7 kilometers that we didn't need to do. So anyway, so there was times like that to find our accommodations, and the language was huge though. To have the language was such a great blessing to be able to ask how far is the water.
Mm-hmm.
So it was incredible, and I understand you and Brittany did it as well, and that's just awesome.
We did, we did a much shorter, the 100K roughly version, but yeah. So there are a lot of different ways to do it too. So when Brittany and I did it with her parents and her parents' friends, we had a service. So we just had a regular luggage, and they would load it up into a van. It would go to the next hotel. Everything was all settled. Were you doing it more the pilgrim way, as they would call it, where you were staying in the more like hostel type locations, or what? How did you do it?
No, not at all. We hired Max Adventure, and we had them take our suitcases, one suitcase, and then they also did all the reservations. We could do it the pilgrim way, but Stephanie was coming from California. I was coming from Miami. And we were in London saying hi to Mike, because that's where he's from. We stayed there for a week. And again, I was in Miami for 2 nights before. One night after, I was in Denver. It's logistically a lot harder. So I needed a suitcase. Out of the 31 days, I was gone for almost 2 months. So I needed more things. Then I wasn't only doing Santiago, and we didn't have anywhere to put our things. So it was, and the reservations, it's time too. The time it takes to, so you hired the company would do your reservations as well from Sarria, right? Is where you did it?
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds really similar where we, they had everything kind of dialed for us, and all we had to do was walk.
Yes.
So for people who aren't, go ahead.
I said we still had to carry the water and the extra shoes and the first aid and the food, and we still had 20-pound packs, not 40-pound or whatever it is.
Yeah. For people who aren't familiar, what is the experience like? I mean, there's these stamps that you get, and then of course there are just so many other people, and I would assume you had the same experience where you just start talking to all these people from all these different countries. What was that like?
Yeah, we got to just meet some amazing friends that are lifelong friends now. Like this gentleman, probably in his late 70s, by the name of Ray. He was carrying a picture of his wife. He had cancer. And he became just our dear, dear friend. And he did the same as we did. So we saw him at the beginning. Yeah, it was so cool. To me, what I loved was moving around with the languages, because I also speak a little bit of Italiano. So practicing my Italian was just such a treat. And just the Americas, weren't as represented as Europe and Australia. There was a lot of Australia, New Zealand.
The Koreans, too. I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if you noticed that there were so many Koreans as well.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because the taxi driver that we spoke to said that the South Koreans are, because I asked him, well, how do people get through the heat? Because sometimes it was really, really hot. And he said that the South Koreans are the only ones that make it like in July and August. So, but what time of year did you do it?
This was just last October. So it was never, and in fact, it was quite the opposite. It was very rainy and cold especially because we only did the last part, which is in the very rainy part of Galicia, as you probably know. But
yeah, we got wind and a little bit of rain, but not too bad. Yeah,
we had days that were rain from the second we got up to the second we ended. I mean, it was downpour.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, just cold and soaked like all day. Yeah.
Oh, so sorry. No, we had most amazing Camino weather. Yeah.
That's awesome.
When I like the seventh day, so we went up the Pyrenees, and it was 7.5 hours later, and it was kind of like hiking from Aspen to here, but longer.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite the uphill, and then going down, I felt this boot hit my shin, and I ignored it, which I shouldn't have had, because then I ended up getting tendonitis, and I ended up in a Logroño trauma with a trauma doctor in a hospital, and then that's the only day we didn't hike, Steph and I, because she said, you're not going. So that's when I spoke to the taxi driver, and that's when he told me about the South Koreans.
Gotcha.
But it's interesting, a lot of what happens, and looking back at guidebooks and things, and they said that around the seventh day, a lot of people do get tendonitis because of the downhill, and it's downhill pavement, a lot of it. So it's interesting that we had to bring that up as well.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch the different people, and some of them would have Crocs on or something and just tape everywhere, and they just be limping from all the mess that their feet and their legs were, but they would just do it anyway. It was just crazy. But yeah, what was your experience like at the end, after walking for 31 days and then you finally reach this goal that always has different, implications, I guess, for different people?
Well, I took Tommy's ashes in a little tin, and I spread them through the 31 days. And so at the end, I went to, did you go to the statue of Santiago and the pilgrim pointing towards the cathedral?
I did. Uh-huh.
Okay. So I spread the last of Tommy's ashes at the base. So that was pretty emotional, but it gave me a lot of peace. It's already epic to get to Santiago de Compostela and the festivities that go on, and it almost seems like, wow, it's over, really? Then you every day you want it to be over, and then you don't want it to be over.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you go, oh no, because it's amazing how the body just, after 5 days or a week, it just, okay, just walk. I guess you're just going to walk forever. So it was emotional, and it gave me great peace.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Leave Tommy everywhere in Spain, a little bit of Tommy.
That's great. Well, I want to start to wrap it up, but I did want to ask one more thing. What, you spent a little bit more time lately in Honduras. What is it like there in Honduras these days?
Well, I went and I went at the middle of October to help with my mom because she's 89. She turned 89 when I was there, and she's doing well. She's just getting up there, and I also financially it helped me to rent my little house out. So because I'm figuring it out as I go as far as being able to afford Crested Butte. So it had a double purpose. And one thing that I always do, regardless of where I go, is look for exercise, look for movement, which usually brings camaraderie and friends. And so I joined the local tennis club and I joined the gym. And it was those 2 hours in the morning, done by 9:30. But that was fantastic. And then it was a lot of work taking care of my mom. It was one thing or the other, going to eye doctor, going to just different doctors. And it was a lot of work, but it was very gratifying. And I'm glad I spent that time with her. My sister lives there. We have a book publishing business. She is the author of most of the books. She studied in what's now Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. So that's why I learned my English. And she, it was been very, very, her goal was to teach, reading, writing, math, science, social studies to little Hondurans. And that's what the name of the books are.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So as far there is places that are, you shouldn't be there, being at the wrong place at the wrong time kind of thing. There is gangs, but there's a lot of, it's not everywhere. The president has done a really good job. There's police everywhere, and it's not as bad as it sounds. Of course, just again, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, you can get into trouble. But for the most part, no, I felt pretty good. Everything is, guarded and protected. But I had a wonderful time. People from my little country are great people. Most of them just want peace and want what we all want. Work and happiness and love your friends and family. And yeah, so it was a great experience. I'm glad I did it. I've done already times where I go for Honduras before, so my kids can immerse in the language and the culture for 6 months at a time, stuff like that. So yeah, it was a wonderful experience to go back.
That's great. You're back in Crested Butte now, and Crested Butte is home for you. So why do you choose to make Crested Butte your home?
Oh, it's my tribe. I love the people here. They've been very, very good. It makes me teary-eyed just to think of how wonderful people were after Tommy passed, and made me feel so welcome. I mean, the minute I got here, and because of the circumstances, because of the pandemic, but I had all my neighbors, and they just saying, "Do you need anything? Do you want anything?" And it's really, the people are just wonderful here and have been. They welcomed me, and I've never felt like a foreigner. If anything, I feel like they really welcomed me because I was, diversity. That, now there's more of us Latinos, but at the time when I got here, we were very few, like I said, with Western and coming to Crested Butte, and never ever did I feel any kind of discrimination or anything like that. I was loved, and of course Tom had a lot to do with, me being accepted and him being such a wonderful person. So
yeah. That's great. Was there anything else I should have asked that you just feel like talking about?
No, I have 2 wonderful kids, and Brittany has helped my girl, and I love her, and I can't believe how amazing she she got through her accident. I prayed for her, and I'm glad to see she's doing okay. And to you, thank you for modeling for Tom all those years and
Oh, it was so fun.
being such a great ski model. Were you also a bike model too? I can't remember.
Yeah, we did a little bit. We didn't do as much of the bike stuff. Definitely a lot more ski ones, but no, I should probably update my headshot for my real estate photo one of these days, but that's still Tom's photo too. So.
Oh, I don't remember that. That's funny. Yeah, you should.
Yeah, I know, but
20 years later.
Anyway, I had already lost most of my hair by then, so it isn't that much different, but anyway.
Oh, and Tommy, we also had a bunch of photographing your wedding, which was awesome.
Exactly, those too. Yep, we have those on a digital thing that run through the whole series, so we see those all the time. Yeah.
Well, we had the best models for everything. So.
Well, last question is, who else should I interview?
I think you should interview Stephanie Prater.
That would be great.
Because she is my Camino, and she's, my Camino partner, and just an awesome human being. And she's a little nutso like we all are. So,
yeah, she would be great. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thanks for listening to the Crested Butte is Home podcast with me, Frank Consella. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast player or visit crestedbutteshome.com for all of the episodes as well as real estate information. And if you want to tell your friends about the podcast or leave a review, that's always appreciated as well. I will be back in another couple of weeks with another good episode, and I will talk to you then.